4, 3, 2.
We are live inside the CEC TV studios with the latest edition of Trailblazer Weekly. He's James Guerin, I'm Carrick Sagmiller, and today we're looking back at the last few weeks of Dixie State basketball.
Both basketball teams were in the Bay Area for a stretch of 4 games in 8 days. We've got all the results for you today on the show. We'll also wrap up the show with a look ahead at next week in Trailblazer Athletics.
It's all coming up next right here on Trailblazer Weekly, so stay with us. It all starts right now. Again, welcome inside this week's edition of Trailblazer Weekly. It's been a few weeks since our last episode. In fact, each basketball team has played 4 games since the last time we were on this set, and that's where we'll begin today.
We'll start our Bay Area recap with women's basketball as the Trailblazers played 4 consecutive games in California, beginning with the January 13th matchup at Notre Dame Daniel Muir. The game went back and forth until Taylor Moyaki nailed a 3-pointer at the end of regulation to send the game to overtime. Maddie Ventling buried a triple midway through overtime session to give DSU an 84-82 lead, but the Trailblazers would not score again as NDNU closed out the 92-84 win. Moyaki led DSU with a career-high 24 points. With no time to dwell on the loss, the Trailblazers headed across the bay to Oakland to battle Holy Names on Monday, January 15th. Dixie State built a 19-point lead in the second half, but Holy Names rallied to pull within 2 points late in the game. However, the Trailblazers weathered a storm and held on for a 78-66 victory. Allie Franks led 4 DSU players in double figures with 20 points. The Trailblazers would have a few days to rest before heading to San Rafael to battle Dominican on Thursday, January 18th. Dixie State took a 5-0 lead early in the game, but the Penguins raced back to build a 29-point advantage in the third quarter. DSU chipped away at the lead in the fourth quarter, and the game ended in a 98-80 loss. Allie Franks once again led 5 DSU players in double-point figures with 18 points. After more than a week on the road already, Dixie State would return to San Francisco for the final game of the trip, a Saturday afternoon tilt at Academy of Art. The Urban Knights built a 37-29 halftime lead, but Dixie State rose to the challenge in the second half, outscoring Academy of Art 46-28 in the final 2 quarters to secure a 75-65 win. Kristen Baldwin led all scorers with 21 points and 10 rebounds for her 6th double-double of the season. Dixie State is now 9-10 overall with a 5-7 mark in Pac West play.
We stay on the court, but move over to the men's side as the men's basketball team also headed to the Bay Area for the Gauntlet 4-game, 10-day trip beginning at Notre Dame Daniel Muir on January 13th. The Trailblazers raced to a 26-point lead and never looked back in the trip's opening game. DSU never trailed on its way to a 77-56 victory. Brandon Simister led the way with 18 points, while Austin Montgomery had one of his best games of the season, chipping in 17 points. With plenty of momentum after the win, DSU headed to Holy Names in Oakland for the second game of the trip. After a back-and-forth opening frame that saw DSU take a 31-28 lead to halftime, the Trailblazers outscored Holy Names 44-29 in the second half to grab a 75-57 victory. Trevor Hill led 4 players in double figures with 11 points, while 3 others chipped in 10 points each. After a few days off to travel to San Rafael, Dixie State was back in action versus Dominican on January 18th. Trailblazers came out firing, shooting better than 50% in the first half to build a 50-34 lead at halftime. The hot start helped propel DSU to a 92-70 victory. Brandon Simister led the way with a team-high 20 points in the victory over the Penguins. Then 2 days later, it was finally time to close the long road trip with a Saturday matchup at Academy of Art in San Francisco. The Urban Knights built a 6-point lead in the first half, but DSU battled back, and Brandon Simister buried a triple just before halftime to give the Trailblazers a 36-33 lead at the break. DSU picked up where it left off in the second half and held on for a 61-47 triumph to complete the 4-game Bay Area sweep. Brandon Simister led the way with a game-high 18 points. Trailblazers have now won 7 consecutive games and hold a 13-6 overall record, including a 10-2 mark in the Pac West to remain in a first-place tie with Azusa Pacific. Quick note, women's swimming before our first break. Dixie State closed out its 2017-18 regular season competition schedule with a dual meet victory over Alaska Fairbanks at the Loyola Marymount hosted Lion Cup held at the LMU Burns Aquatic Center a couple of weeks ago. Though the meet featured 4 teams, DSU and Alaska Fairbanks were scored as a 3-round Division II duel, which the Trailblazers won by a 318-256 count. Dixie State will host an intra-squad team trial on Saturday, January 27th. That is this coming Saturday at the Washington City Community Center. The time trial will serve as the Trailblazers' final tune-up before the 2018 PCSC Conference Championships, which will be held February 14th through February 17th in La Mirada, California. Also, a quick note on softball, as the softball and baseball spring seasons just around the corner. The NCAA Division II just released the preseason top 25 voted on by the National Fast Pitch Coaches Association. Dixie State coming in at number 9 in that preseason top 25. Again, Dixie State softball will open their season next Thursday with a home doubleheader versus Notre Dame, Dana Muir. It's time to take, not Notre Dame, Northwest Nazarene. Getting ahead, Pac-West schedule won't start till a bit later in the season. It'll be Northwest Nazarene in St. George next Thursday. It's time to take our first break. When we come back, we'll take a look ahead at the next week in Trailblazer Athletics. Don't go anywhere. There's more right after this timeout.
The road less traveled, run free, unwind, unravel someplace outside with lots to do. Green trees, red rocks, and don't forget that blue sky. The sunshine shining, sunshine pouring on me. Think I might just stay a while. Say hooray all day because the sun is gonna shine on me. Sun is gonna shine on me. Sun's gonna shine on me.
Did you hear about the pony with a sore throat? He was a little horse. Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding. Why couldn't the Why was the basketball court all wet? Why? Because the players kept dribbling all over it. Where did cats go on vacation? New York.
You think getting dumped by text is harsh? Try getting dumped by a tennis ball. My ex-owner drove me out to the woods, yelled fetch, and by the time I brought the ball back, he was gone. Yeah, I was pissed. But the folks at the shelter helped me let go of my anger. I learned coping skills, like taking it to the hole. Boom! Now I'm ready to fetch again. But how about I throw and you run and get it?
Welcome back inside the CEC TV studios in this week's edition of Trailblazer Weekly. Before we wrap up the show today, let's take a quick look at this week's schedule. You can follow along on your screen. As you can see, a pretty light schedule as this is the last week of only winter sports being active, meaning basketball and swimming. It will be the only game of the week of any of the sports, Friday, January 26th, after that long 10-day trip. And I feel like I can say that. I was on that trip every step of the way, and it was long 9 nights in a hotel room, and now the basketball team's finally back in St. George, and they will host Fresno Pacific inside the Burns Arena on Friday night. Yes, it is a Friday night matchup, not a Saturday night. The women's game will tip at 5:30, the men's game at 7:30. You can see those games right here on the Dixie State Athletics YouTube channel. Also, you can hear the women's game on Radio Dixie 91.3 FM and the men's game on ESPN Radio 97.7 FM. And that is those basketball games, the only games on the upcoming schedule this week. Like I said before, that's the last time that will happen this athletics year, because next week, softball starting. Women's swimming will have a few more events. The basketball teams will be in Hawaii. And then just like that, baseball will be started. Men's and women's golf will be going. And it will be full steam ahead for spring sports. So if you're a fan of just winter sports, enjoy this weekend. If you're not, it's good for you, because the spring sports are coming at you next week. We'll have a ton of highlights and interviews to show you in the coming week. So be sure to help pack the Burns on that Friday night matchup against Fresno Pacific.
That will do it for today's show. We remind you that you can catch all episodes of Trailblazer Weekly on demand on the Dixie State Athletics YouTube page, specifically at youtube.com/Dixie State Athletics, where you can watch the show anytime, anywhere.
Indeed, that is the place to catch the show. For myself, Carrick Segmiller, and James Guerin, and the entire CEC TV crew, we thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on Trailblazer Weekly.